Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most twisted and disturbing FNAF fan games ever created. From horrifying storylines to completely unhinged ideas that somehow made it into actual games, these fan projects get incredibly messed up incredibly fast. Some of these genuinely leave you wondering what was going through the developer's mind, so let's dive into them. Unknown FNAF fan games. Five Nights at Freddy's games that not many people have heard about. Obviously, there are plenty of these. This series has been around for almost 12 years, and the fan game community hasn't slowed down one bit on new releases. I personally love looking at random FNAF fan games in my personal time and finding unpopular ones that might be hidden gems. And a few months ago, I received an email from a dev with an early build of their game. I played it and thought it looked interesting, and recently I found out the full version was released. This game in question is called Jackie's Forest, a very interesting FNAF game to say the least, and that's all I'm going to say about it here. Stick around because I have my fair share of things to say about this specimen of a project, so let's waste no more time and dive into the world of Jackie's Forest. Alright, where should we start? If you said anything except night one to that question, then I hate to break it to you, you might be just a little bit brain dead, but that's okay. I'm here to help you through this process, so we're going to be starting with night one. Something I really like about Jackie's Forest is that while the night sections are usually incredibly easy, each of them are completely different. So there's going to be something new to do each night, so developing a strategy is pretty much impossible. By the way, let's move on to talking about night one, the threats we have to deal with it inside, and of course, the tools at our disposal. Personally, my favorite part of these videos is talking about the tools at our disposal, and that's funny because I'm straight up lying to you, cuh. Anyways, in the first night section, we're actually in the office. Surprisingly, we actually don't have any cameras, which I'm gonna be honest, kind of makes this entire section really boring. But please, don't click off the video. I promise this game is interesting. I wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't. On the computer in front of us, we're able to look through our files and access a sound system that goes around the entire building. I'm willing to bet you're able to figure out what that means, but if not, allow me to explain it to you. Before I can explain it to you, however, I do need to talk about the first threat that this night introduces, Maurice. And no, not the cool guy from Madagascar. Unfortunately, it's just a disgusting fucking pig-ass, fuck-ass skunk. This motherfucker right here really likes the sound of children. So while most people dress up as monsters for Halloween, Maurice has been dressing up as Jared Fogle. So I guess he also dressed up as a monster, but it's like a little bit different because, like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Maurice will slowly make his way to your office. Shining your flashlight on the door in front of you when he gets close will reveal his rapist homo thug black boy face.
Don't be filming me, brother. You got your rapist homo thug black boys over there.
What the hell are you talking about?
All you have to do when you see him is play a sound from another room in your control panel to lure him away. However, this is where I have to talk about a truly disturbing and butthole-ripping mechanic this character has. Do you guys remember the dreaded 1 in 7 from FNAF 3 with Springtrap? Yeah? That mechanic that gives Springtrap a 1 in 7 chance to just ignore the audio lure? Yeah, well, Maurice has that too, except this time around, instead of 1 in 7, it's borderline 1 in 2, because this motherfucker does not move a goddamn inch, and I'm sick of it. The dev really thought, I know how I can make this character work. How about I make his entire mechanic just spamming a button until the player flips heads on a coin flip? Fuck him. But whatever. Once you eventually get lucky enough, Maurice will be dragged away. However, as I'm sure you could have guessed, that is not the only character active on this night, because if it was, this would easily be one of the most piss-poor sections from any FNAF game I've ever covered on this channel. So, who's the other little gooner we have to deal with tonight? Well, that would be Jackie, the character from the title of the game. You know, I always thought it would be pretty funny to make a FNAF game called Five Nights at whatever the fuck the name I choose is, and then never add a character with that name. Like, imagine Five Nights at Ronald's, but there's never a character named Ronald in the game. I don't know, maybe my sense of humor is just retarded, but I think that would be really funny. Anyway. Anyway. Anyways, moving on to what Jackie actually does. Jackie's goal is to attack you via the window on your left. You can flash your flashlight to that window to check if Jackie is there. However, Jackie will also just make a fuck ton of noise whenever she moves. Once Jackie gets too close for comfort, all you have to do is turn the power to your office off until you hear her leave. And then you're Bing chilling, which is a quote from Martin Luther King, I'm pretty sure. But one last thing to talk about is the fact that this night is not time-based and is instead task-based. So you know what that means? No actual tasks have to be done. You really just have to click a button and wait for a loading bar to fill up and then click another button. So it's really just fucking time-based with a task-based blanket tossed over it. But once you finish the waiting simulator, night 1 will come to a close. But instead of just moving on to night 2, we instead get to talk about a post-night minigame because this game has those too. And trust me, the thought of doing a post-night minigame definitely does not make me want to put a hamster in a sock and start whipping it around like a mace. In this minigame, we need to help a squirrel pack food for a picnic. Seems pretty simple, and simple it is. Our first options for food are a piece of cheese or a fucking boot. Let's think about that, you stupid retarded ass squirrel. Have you ever eaten a boot? No, those go on your fucking feet. Next, she asks us what we can eat with the cheese, and our options are crackers or a fucking broken CD. Dumb bitch, why the fuck? Dumb bitch, why the fuck do you even have a CD that's broken? What could possibly be the point of keeping something like that in your house, hoarder? Throw it away, trailer trash. Next up, we've got to add some fruit. So she asks us what kind of apple we'd like to bring to the picnic. Except instead of the options being Honeycrisp, Granny Smith, Gala, or whatever the fuck, the options are apple or apple core. Jesus Christ, bimbo bitch. An apple core? That was on your list of things to possibly bring? You're wasting my time asking me these dumbass questions. For fuck's sake, what's the next question? Let's just fucking get this over with. Next, we have to bring some dessert, and our options are chocolate or a fucking battery. I bet these bitches aren't even charged either. Just some dead ass batteries for us to shove up our ass. No, we're not eating batteries. Are you a baby? A stupid drooling baby? These questions are so simple, for God's sake. Next up, we get to choose a drink. And the options are an orange juice box or unlabeled broken ass bottle with who the fuck knows what in it. I'm just done, guys. This is making my head hurt. No fucking shit, we're gonna take the juice, you dumb bitch! I swear to God, intelligence is chasing this squirrel, but she's just so much faster. Hopefully, she doesn't ask another retarded question because just like Kanye, I don't like retarded questions.
What? Please, next question. Please don't ask me any retarded questions.
Now, where should we pour our drink?
Are we serious right now? Are we actually so dead ass in this moment? Why the fuck would we pour the orange juice into some fuck ass rusty can with sepsis on it or some shit? And why would we pour it into the normal looking mug anyways? It was already in a fucking box with a straw. Guys, Sandy Cheeks has gotten a big downgrade. I hate this squirrel. But we have one last question. Please, don't be something stupid.
Now the most important part. What is the core of all life forms?
Oh. A computer chip or a pulsating brain. I don't really know why the brain is pulsating. They don't really do that. It's not a heart, but I guess I'll be picking that one. Cool. Anyways, then we go to the door to see our friends, but before we can leave, she says this.
Oh, silly me. How could I forget? We're never getting out of here.
So we're never allowed to leave the house. I'm stuck with this brain-dead rodent for the rest of time. Aye, gang, time to blow my shit clean off. But snapping back to reality, we do see a strange figure in the window. Not sure who that could be, but I'm going to take a guess it's probably this game's antagonist. With the minigame out of the way, we're safe to move on to night 2. With night 2 coming along, we appear to be in a new location. This time around being the maintenance room. Immediately, you'll notice your mother sitting on the table in front of us. Thank God that that thing is made out of the incredibly strong material it is, because if it wasn't, you know damn well that bitch would have snapped in the middle like a twig. Anyways, we'll start talking about her in a second. To start, the way we complete this section is just by shredding a bunch of paper using the shredder in front of us. It's literally just another click and wait task-based mechanic, so really just a waiting game. You'll see in the top corner that we have 10 pages to shred. There are 2 characters attacking us this night, just like previously. However, before we talk about them, I want to talk about the fact that your shredder can jam. And if it does, all you have to do is slap it like I do to my kids when they talk a little bit too loud, and it'll go back to working as usual. Next, we have the wall behind us, which has a thermostat on it. Throughout the night, there will be several instances where you will need to change the temperature. Why do we have to do this? I have no fucking idea. Just accept it and do it, you little piglet. If you don't keep the temperature in the right spot, then you'll either die of a heat stroke or get hypothermia and die. Either way, you're dead, so just keep it at a crisp digit. Now we can move on to talking about the characters we have to deal with on this night. And of course, we'll talk about the beastly woman that is your mother first. What she does is incredibly simple. Occasionally, she'll look up at you like she thinks you're the waiter at the restaurant bringing her slop over. All you have to do is stare at her until she snaps out of it, and then you can continue doing what you were doing. Notice how your mom doesn't get up off the table either? That's probably because it's incredibly difficult for her to lift her cankles up. First world problems, am I right? The only other threat on this night is Maurice. Maurice will try to sneak up on you through the door in front of you. Apparently, we're not allowed to just keep the fucking door closed, so we'll have to hold it closed ourselves. Maurice is very quiet, so you'll have to check the door constantly to listen for him. If you hear him there, just hold the door closed and eventually he'll leave and you can go back to doing what you were doing. After shredding all 10 pieces of paper, night 2 will be completed and we can move on to the next post-night minigame, which hopefully this time will not make me want to nya paka and then do something with a train. My Russian homies know what I'm talking about. Come on, high five, hands up. Yeah, come here, bring it in right now. Come close. No. Okay, that's fine. That's okay. All right, so this minigame is just nearly as infuriating as the last one is, but I'm going to try to hold my tongue for as long as I can. In this minigame, we have to help the skunk that looks like a wolf set up a tent. So of course, the first step to setting up a tent is picking the biggest bag of marshmallows we see. Literally, what the fuck is this? You don't need marshmallows to set up a tent, you dirty slut. After picking the biggest bag of marshmallows for the skunk and his fat fuck friends, miraculously, the poles for the tent appear. And I'll be honest, I'm not a big camper myself, but I'm pretty confident that that is not what the poles of a tent look like. Next, we have to pick out enough sleeping bags for everyone that will be sleeping in the tent. All right, yes, that makes sense. Finally, something here that doesn't piss me off. And when we select the correct number, somehow the tarp is placed over the tent instead of the sleeping bags appearing. Fantastic. This makes so much sense and totally isn't about to make a blood vessel in my eye explode. Next, we need to pick a super long rope. Now, at first, I thought we would use these ropes to connect the stakes that we're going to put in the ground. But instead of that, after selecting the longest rope, we just put the stakes in the ground and just punch that rope into the fucking woods or something, because as you can see, they're nowhere to be found. After we finish the tent, all we have to do is wait for the other people to arrive. Except while we're doing that, it appears that Maurice is hit by a fucking semi or something. I have no idea. That's what it sounds like, but we don't really see anything happen. Just this disgusting render of him staring at us. But with that, we can move on to night 3. On night 3, we're stationed backstage. Once again, we do have 2 threats to deal with throughout this section, and a task-based minigame that's just clicking and waiting once again. So let's talk about that first. We're tasked this night with deleting show stage sequences from, I'm assuming, the robot's AI? I'm not really sure, but luckily for us, what we're doing doesn't actually matter all too much. We do, however, have a fuck ton of them to delete, so this night will likely be the longest we've done so far. Anyways, on to the threats on this night. Once again, we have your mother, so let's talk about her. She will just try to walk up on you because she heard you have meat in your pants. Gross. Not the type of meat we're talking about, you fucking buffoon. Once you see her, all you have to do is open up your panel and activate her sound sequence and it'll make her go away. Fun fact, the sound that actually lures her away is just the Burger King jingle, which really goes to show how down bad your mother is for food. She's eating Burger King? I didn't even think she would stoop that low. Yet, Here we are. The other character active on this night is Jackie. You'll be able to see her on stage, which we are directly behind. Occasionally, she will leave this stage, which means in a few seconds, she will approach you. When she does, all you have to do is hold your light on her and she'll start shaking like the cashier at Wendy's when I hold him at gunpoint. And then she'll go back to the stage. But that's really it. While this night is probably the longest so far, I do feel it's probably one of the most underwhelming. But then again, if I'm being honest, the gameplay in this game as a whole is pretty underwhelming. Anyways, let's move on to the next post-night minigame. Just kidding, fuckhead. There is no post-night minigame this time around. Instead, we're just booted to night 4 because we're not allowed to have any fun apparently. So, on night 4, we set up shop in the playroom. Why? Well, apparently we were chased in here by animatronics or something. I'm not really sure why we're here because we're never explicitly told, but we can work with it. Phone Guy tells us that he'll try to work on activating the speakers to get the characters to fuck off for long enough for us to escape. But in the meantime, we'll have to defend ourselves from 3 characters instead of just 2, except it really is still pretty much just 2, but I'll explain why in a second. Let's start by talking about Jackie, since she can't seem to leave our nuts alone. Bars. She will attempt to attack us from the playhouse door. When we see her, all we have to do is close the door and she won't be able to see us. You'll also notice that unlike the door from night 2, this door doesn't have to be held closed and can actually be toggled. So what's stopping us from just holding the door closed the entire night? Well, that would be because of your fat fuck mother. That's why. She's programmed to play hide and seek. And while the phone guy says it's to play it with the children, I personally happen to know that it's really because she plays hide and seek with the waitresses and tries to hunt down the food they're carrying out to the tables before they can get it to the customers. I'm no idiot. So yeah, all you have to do to avoid her is just not keep the door closed for too long. So she really doesn't have a mechanic. She's just a consequence to abusing another mechanic. So for that reason, I'm saying she really doesn't count as a character on this night. Who does count as a character is the actual other threat on this night. The skunk dick. He will try to attack you through the playhouse window. During this night, you're equipped with 15 balls. Why? Because he's a dick, that's why. Whenever you see Maurice appear outside of your window, just throw one of the balls in his direction and that'll distract him for a while. We obviously can't spam these balls since we only have 15 of them, but if we need to, I'm willing to BME Pain Olympics myself to get 2 more. But with that, that's really all we have to do. No task this time since we're surviving, so it's a pretty typical sit and survive kind of night. But with that, this night will come to a close and we can move on to the next post-night minigame. In this minigame, we have to help your fat shit mom bake a cake. She says it's because she invited her friends over for a sleepover, but we all know your mom ate her friends because she was hungry. So she's really just baking this cake for herself, fat ass. To start, we need to grab the butter. Thankfully, it appears this time that there's nothing fucking stupid to piss me off. The only thing that really does so far is the fact that the egg, for some reason, has way more white than yolk. Like, way more than usual. That does not look natural at all. Somebody has got to check the chicken that shot that fucking thing out of its dick. Eggs come out of the dick, right? Next up, we gotta add sugar and mix that shit up like I do with all of the babies in the nursery while the nurses aren't looking. Next, we add the fuck-ass egg and the vanilla extract that smells way better than it tastes. Finally, we mix it again, add in the flour and the milk, and mix it one last time. I've made a few cakes in my time, and I'm pretty confident that we used these ingredients out of order, but fuck it, I don't really care. And while the cake is being baked, we're asked if we can find the TV remote since they're all going to want to watch something. And while I'm sure you can tell by looking at your screen where the remote is, what is much more interesting to do is slowly looking to our right, where we will begin to hear the sound of a dog scratching at the door. Click on the door, and we see this.
Are you lost, little one?
I'm looking for my dog.
A little white one?
Yes. Have you seen him?
Yes. He's here with me. He misses you a lot. I was looking for his owner.
Can I please see him?
Of course. Come with me.
So, this dude in a rabbit mask 100% stabbed the shit out that kid, right? It's not just me thinking that? Okay, good. Just gotta make sure we're all on the same page because, and again, I'm no FNAF expert or anything, but I'm pretty confident he killed the shit out that kid. Anyways, with that, the minigame ends and we can move on to night 5. Night 5 takes place in the boiler room, and this night is something else. Let's just say that. And by something else, I mean by far the most anxiety-inducing night so far. Why? Not because of how hard it is, because it really isn't that hard at all, but instead because of how long it takes to make the 2 threats go away. Let's talk about it. The first threat on this night is once again, for like the millionth time, your fat as fuck bouncy ball looking ass mother. She probably heard that it was called the boiler room and assumed that meant that's where they boil the water for all the pasta she's forcing down her throat. That pig bitch. Literal pig bitch. When she approaches you from behind, all you have to do is hold the gate closed until she leaves. The other character, Maurice, is who makes my nerves ache like they're exposed and somebody clapped as hard as they could with them in between them. When he appears around from the corner looking at you all seductive like, all you have to do is turn to the massive valves in front of you and turn the smallest one at the bottom right. This will cause a whistling sound to play, which is supposed to scare him away. Except, here's the funny part. Do you remember how during night 1, he had a very large chance to just not fucking listen to the sound cues at all? Yeah? Well, he does that here as well. Isn't that just so fucking awesome? Hell yeah, it is. We love that. This is why this section is so nerve-wracking, because this dude just doesn't ever leave. I love it. Anyways, on to what we actually have to do to complete this section. It's pretty simple. The phone guy will slowly read off different pipe colors in a specific order, and we'll have to turn the corresponding pipes in the boiler room in the correct order to complete the night. Very easy, but not so when the fucking skunk won't hop up off me. Once we get close to turning all the valves, you'll notice that if you turn around, the stupid squirrel will be present instead of your mom. Very weird, since as far as we were aware, she wasn't supposed to be showing up at this time, so why is she here? After finishing all of the valves, the building shakes. Turning around, we'll see the gate is open and the squirrel is gone. And soon after that, the building shakes again and we black out and the credits roll.
Closed down restaurant is burned to the ground by boiler failure. Last night, the restaurant, Jackie's Forest, is burned down to the ground due to an explosion caused by a lack of maintenance of the boilers. The building had been abandoned on January of this year, and it was rumored that the explosion was caused by a lack of proper maintenance from the workers when leaving the building. One casualty was reported, as only one body was found in the remains of the building, crushed by rubble and burned to a crisp. It is theorized that this may have been a burglar or homeless person, as the building wasn't operating and didn't have any workers in it. The 4 animatronic performers the restaurant was known for were found in unusable conditions and will be relocated to a storage facility owned by the company.
And that nets us this game's bad ending. Now I know what you're thinking, and trust me, I'm thinking the same thing. How the fuck do we get a good ending in this game? And please, dear God, tell me it's not that I have to collect a random item in each night. Well, thankfully, no, we don't have to do that. Instead, during the boiler room night, if you just completely fucking ignore what the phone guy says and spam the shit out of all the valves, for some reason, the whole building shakes and we get teleported to a room with an elevator. Entering the elevator, we get the following cutscene.
Eddie, I told you to stay in the boiler room. What are you doing? You're in grave danger. You, can't leave the boiler room, much less go into the elevator while the building is falling apart. You have to turn around and leave now. I don't think you're listening to me. I said turn around. Go back to the boiler room. You are not supposed to be in the storage. Not only is it unsafe, but there is confidential stuff down there. You have to leave now.
Ignoring the fact that voice acting was completely awful, I do find it kind of odd how the phone guy really wanted us to turn back, and why he didn't want us to go to the storage room. But with that, we exit the elevator and do exactly what he told us not to, enter the storage room, which actually acts as this game's 6th night. So, here we are in the storage room, by far the most interesting night in this entire game, mainly because there's more than 2 things for us to do. This night integrates every single character we've seen so far, alongside a completely new threat. Let's quickly go over the tools at our disposal first. To start, this is the first night in the game with actual cameras. However, you want to hear something really funny? They're completely useless. So the only thing I'm going to say about them is that the character renders in these cameras are actually pretty creepy for what it's worth. So let's start going down the list of characters on this night and exactly what they do. We'll start with Jackie. Her whole goal is to attack your right door. You won't be able to see her there unless you flash your light in the doorway. If she's there, simply close the door until she leaves. Simple sugar. Maurice is much the same, except he attacks your left door, and instead of closing the door, you'll have to wear a mask you somehow pulled out of your ass, since as you can clearly see, the lever to the door is fucking shattered. The next character to talk about is your pig bitch of a mother. She will try to attack the giant hallway in front of you. When you see her there, all you have to do is pull down the massive gate and she won't be able to get in. As you can probably tell, just because there's more characters in this night in no way means that this game gets any bit harder than it has been. But finally, we can talk about the brand new character on this night. I don't know its name because we're not told, but I'm just gonna call it the Prototype since I bet that's how uncreative its actual name is. Hey, recording Dxtr here. I went into the custom night. Its name is Nulls. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I'm going to keep reading it as Prototype since that's how I wrote it and I'm lazy, but just know it's Nulls. The Prototype has two ways to attack you, your left door and the hallway in front of you. For both instances of attack, all you have to do is put your mask on and it'll go away. This night is really fucking boring, guys, I can't lie. But with that, just survive until 6 a.m., which is much shorter than most FNAF games, and we get a new newspaper clipping.
Engineer arrested after evidence is released by fire survivor in Jackie's Forest restaurant. Last night, the restaurant Jackie's Forest burned down to the ground after an explosion caused by boiler failure. The failure was caused by Eddie Garcia, a worker who was misinstructed by Harvey Turner, the engineer of the restaurant, who is being charged with attempted murder and obstruction of justice after it was revealed by Garcia that Turner had sent him to destroy incriminating evidence from the building. Garcia was able to survive and escape the fire and is being sentenced to home arrest for complicity, while Turner will be kept in custody while the case is investigated. Some evidence links him to 2 local cases, but nothing is confirmed yet. The restaurant had closed in January of this year, rumored to be because of the Maddie Denton case, a 7-year-old girl who went missing in the restaurant on September of last year.
And with that, we get the good ending. As far as I'm aware, no more lore as to what the fuck is going on with the weird dude or the dead dog or the dead kid, so I'm just gonna leave it and pretend like it doesn't exist. I mean, I guess if you want to analyze it quickly from that newspaper clipping, it's kind of hinted that Turner, or the phone guy, is the one that killed the girl and the dog or something. I don't fucking know. But with that, that's all Jackie's Forest has to offer. Like I said, I was actually sent a demo of this game a few months ago by the devs, which only had the first 2 nights. And I remember thinking that this game could do something pretty cool if they polished it up a bit. And while from the demo I got, the game has definitely gotten a small upgrade, I figured I should give it a white video the moment I saw the full version was released. Overall, Jackie's Forest tries to do a lot of things, but I personally think it falls short in all of them. I don't think it does a very good job at telling its story, considering I was literally able to piece together pretty much none of it. I know there's at least 1 dead kid and a dog and some weird stranger guy that probably killed some kids, but who is he? What does the Prototype thing have to do with anything? And who are any of the characters besides our own and the phone guy? That's just completely unknown to me. And on top of that, while each night is unique and I do really like that, I just feel like each night could have had something more. Because as this game stands, while I do like the character designs, I do think that those are the only memorable parts of this game. I've covered several overwhelming FNAF games on my channel before, and I'm sure I'll cover many more in the future. Today is no different. I've recently stumbled across a fan game dev by the name of Solar Neon, responsible for Late Shift at Nintendo World, which is in a video I've made recently with a very good song along with it. Well, call me surprised when I found out that Solar has actually been working on an entire series of FNAF games, and that 2 of the 6 of them have already been released. Knowing that, I couldn't help myself but get sucked right in, and now I'm going to force you to be sucked in as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Swing Shift at Farley's, a FNAF fan game with some of the darkest and most sinister storytelling I've ever seen. Before we start talking about the actual gameplay loop this game has to offer, I first want to talk about the stylistic choices of this game. Something I noticed is that Swing Shift at Farley's really feels like FNAF 1. A lot of games try to replicate the style and feel of FNAF 1, but I honestly don't think many are capable of doing it. Farley's is definitely one of them. The overall look and feel of the game really reminds me of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which makes the game feel nostalgic. I love it. Anyways, moving on to talking about Night 1. There is plenty to talk about. Look at the length of the video. Again, the person that made this game also made Late Shift at Nintendo World, so you know we're about to see some of the most creative shit you've ever seen in your entire life. To start, there are a lot of places you're able to move, but before we go down the list talking about them, describing the doors is very important. Swing Shift at Farley's doesn't use a typical power system, which I love. It makes my dick not feel like it's on fire. However, the doors do have their own type of power system involved. When a door is closed, the door's fuse will quickly decrease. If it empties completely, then obviously the door will be forced open. So that bodes the question, what the fuck are we going to do about that? Very epic answer, I will say, and this brings up probably my favorite mechanic. As I said, there are multiple rooms you can go to from the office. Turning to the left door, you can turn once more and go to some weird back room area. I think this is a hallway. Then, turning once more, you can go to a storage room. Inside of this storage room, you can grab a new fuse. But of course, it's not just as simple as grabbing the fuse, as there is a minigame you have to complete first. A bar will appear at the bottom of your screen, and an arrow will slide back and forth. You have to time and click when the arrow is in the middle of the bar 3 times in a row for you to be able to pull out the fuse. I guess we have to really put our backs into picking up this fuse that probably weighs as much as all of the food in your mom's fridge combined. Get it? Because a fuse is very light, and your mom's fridge is empty because she ate it all? Yeah, you got it. Directly behind you while looking at the camera monitor is where your fuse box is located. You can remove an empty fuse and replace it with a new one you grabbed. However, the fuse has to be empty before you can replace it. So this will lead to you having to forcefully make your door run out of power at times. But that will make more sense once we start talking about the actual threats this night introduces. Speaking of which, let's do that now. Night 1 only introduces 2 threats. However, they both go on to serve a very important purpose. So let's talk about Basil first. Basil is this weird fucking dog thing. His goal is to attack your left door. He will make his way through the cameras and eventually make it to your door. However, something interesting you'll notice about Basil and your hallways for that matter is that they have no lights. So you won't actually be able to see Basil at your door, nor does he make a sound cue informing you he's there. So that poses the question, how are you supposed to know he's there? Something about Basil, and every animatronic in this game, is that unlike characters from some other FNAF games, they will never move backwards. So once Basil gets to his final camera before attacking, once he leaves that camera, you know for a fact he's at your door and you need to close it. This leads to you needing to constantly watch the cameras to track the characters, something I've noticed a lot of other FNAF games are unable to do without adding a music box or finding them on the cameras mechanic. See, fellow game devs, this game is proof that you can find an interesting way to use the cameras that isn't those 2 things. Basil will bang on the door when he leaves so you can open it again. In general, 1 fuse usually lasts about 2 attacks from characters before you should let it run out and replace it. Charlie is the next character introduced, and she does literally the exact same thing as Basil, except she attacks your right door. Not much more to say about her. Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, each of them doing something different, adding a lot more stress to this game. It's during this night I noticed just how hard this game was truly going to get throughout the later nights. Because even just on night 2, you're already getting dogpiled, and the reflexes and balancing skills you'll need drastically increase. The first and most recognizable threat added is Florence. He is the Foxy equivalent of this game. He is in fucking jail. No, I'm not kidding. He's literally behind bars. Throughout the night, he'll make his way through several phases before bum rushing your office like your mom bum rushed the cafeteria in her school years, canonically revealing that she's had this terrible eating habit all her life. Of course, watching him on the cameras will slow him down, but with several other characters that will require you to also constantly be watching them, it's safe to say that you won't be stalling him nearly as much as you can stall Foxy, as you do actually have to be looking at him. Unlike Foxy, Florence can attack whichever door he wants. And also, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to force his attack to happen earlier. With Foxy, you could check the left hall, but there doesn't appear to be an equivalent for Florence. What you'll have to do is listen to hear which side his footsteps come on and close the respective door. This brings up a synergy with Basil and Charlie. As I said earlier, each fuse has enough power to block 2 attacks, maybe 3 if you cut it really close, which I wouldn't recommend. So having Florence attack a door that only has 1 attack left, and then noticing that Basil or Charlie is about to attack that door will really get your blood pressure to rise as you quickly whip around to do that quick time event minigame to get a new fuse. I love the stress this character brings, I can't lie. The final threat this night introduces is Dominic. He brings on an entire new mechanic into this game. In your office, you'll now see that you're able to look up. Doing so, you'll find a vent. Hooray! I can't wait to see what this asshole is about to do. Dominic appears in the same camera as Florence. When he decides he's going to try to get to you, he will move to the back room. On this back room camera, you will see a new pop-up at the bottom. It's a heater for the vent. I'm sure you can see where this is going. When Dominic leaves this backroom camera, it means he has just entered your vent. However, that doesn't mean you should blast the vent just yet, as after you use the heater, you'll have to wait for it to cool down. And just because Dominic is in your vents doesn't mean he'll be combated by the heater just yet. This is the point in time where you'll need to constantly check the vent above you to see if you can hear him banging around inside of them. If you don't hear him, don't blast him. When you do hear the banging, this is when you should go to the camera, charge up the heater, and activate it. You do have to be looking at the vent to hear the banging, so don't think you can just avoid looking up, because unfortunately, you cannot. Night 3 is a doozy, adding 1 new threat that in turn adds 1 new mechanic, enough to make everyone's urethra begin to leak blood. So let's talk about her. The threat that Night 3 introduces is Whitney, and Whitney introduces your flashlight. I bet you can already guess what she's going to do. Whitney has 3 avenues she can attack you from: your left door, your right door, and the vent above you. She will wander around the cameras and eventually pick one to attack. When she is at one of those locations, you have to spam your flashlight at her until she goes away. However, something you may have wondered, and no, this flashlight does not work how most FNAF flashlights tend to, as this one is much worse. The rate at which the battery drains from this flashlight is a lunacy. So, to compensate, you're able to charge it back up. But how do you do this, you might ask? Well, on the cameras, you will see a new pop-up. Using this pop-up, you can slowly recharge your flashlight. The problem with this? Obviously, aside from the fact that it's just a fucking music box, which I hate, is that the camera in which this pop-up is on teleports to a random camera whenever it damn well pleases. Did you just fucking hear me? The music box mechanic, aka my second least favorite mechanic of all time, is a find them on the camera mechanic, aka my number 1 least favorite mechanic of all time. This fucking charging flashlight pop-up is the combination of my 2 least favorite things, and they happen at the same goddamn time. You can't make this shit up, bro. When I first saw this, my penis instantly wilted like a flower and died. Fuck me. And that's not even the end of it, as Whitney behaves in the same way as Charlie and Basil. There is no sound cue for when she arrives at any of the 3 places she can arrive, and you also can't tell if she's there without flashing your light, which I've already explained drains way too quickly for you to just be flashing it all willy-nilly. So you have to track her exactly how you have to track Charlie and Basil. There's not even a crazy amount of characters, yet this is quickly becoming one of the most stressful FNAF games I've ever played. And don't even get me started on how stressful this game gets when you go about replacing your fuses. You will be spending a majority of your time staring at the cameras, especially on later nights when the characters are moving pretty quickly. So having to spend a fuck ton of time grabbing the fuse and replacing it will guarantee that you lose track of literally every character you were watching. It's so stressful, and while I'm not a huge fan of being stressed out, if you could believe that, I do still think it's really cool how this game is able to pull that off. Night 4, and again, just as Five Nights at Freddy's did, Night 4 introduces the big bad antagonist himself, Farley. And let me tell you, he's honestly probably the least threatening character this game's seen so far, with a mechanic that makes him sound a lot scarier than he really is. Let's talk about it. Farley works in the exact same way as Charlie. The goal is to make it to your right door. However, the big catch with Farley is that you can't see him on your cameras. And of course, we already know we can't see door characters at our door. So how do we know where Farley is? Well, every time that Farley moves, he will laugh, which by the way, if you were curious, is just FNAF 1 Freddy's laugh. You will have to keep track throughout the night of how many times Farley laughs, as every 5th laugh will signal that Farley is now at your right door and that you need to close it. And this is where this game introduces a mechanic so cool, yet so useless. In your office, you will now see you have a little notepad. Using this notepad, you will be able to leave little tally marks. Now, why would you need to leave little tally marks? Well, this is this game's way of letting you keep track of how many times Farley has moved so you don't have to just remember. Every time you hear him laugh, open your notepad and mark a line. Once you deal with his attack, switch to your eraser, erase it, and start again. I think this is super cute and unique. I've never seen a FNAF game do something like this before, as most would probably prefer you just remember it yourself because that's way more AIDS inducing. However, the way the rest of this game controls does bring up an issue with this otherwise awesome mechanic. I have 2 hands, in case you weren't aware, and on my 2 hands, 5 fingers are attached each. What's stopping me from counting Farley's movements on my hand? Doing this is actually a much better choice in my opinion, since it eliminates the time it would otherwise take to drop the camera, open the notebook, mark it down, close the notebook, and then reopen the camera. I think there's a very simple way to solve this problem and further encourage the player to actually use the notebook. All you would have to do is make another mechanic use a keybind. For example, instead of Whitney and the QuickTime event to get the fuse being controlled by the mouse, why not bind both of those systems to your control key? That way the player will have one hand on the mouse and the other on the keyboard most of the night, making it so that using the in-game notepad would make much more sense since you wouldn't have that open hand. I think the idea of the notepad is super nice, and while totally unnecessary, I think if it was encouraged in a more natural way, it would actually be one of the most interesting mechanics I've ever seen in one of these FNAF fan games. But as it exists right now, I just don't see any real reason to use it. Night 5 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, really just being a much more stressful version of Night 4. On my playthrough, which by the way you can watch over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, there was a point where I had to pretty much get 2 fuses in a row because I got unlucky with attacks. Honestly, one of the most stressful moments I've ever had playing a FNAF game. It was so cool. One interesting thing I do want to talk about on this night is the lack of a phone call. Just like FNAF 1, on Night 4, the phone guy gets beamed out of existence by an enemy. On Night 5, if you check the back room, you can see what I can only assume to be the phone guy with his head on an endoskeleton body. If there's one thing about Solar, the developer of this game, she does not hold back on the shock value of her games. That's what I love so much about them. Night 6 time, here we are. Spoiler alert, there's pretty much nothing to talk about, except 2 things. To start, there's no new threat. Night 6 is just a harder version of Night 5. However, if you look in the back room, you'll notice that the corpse is now missing. And this time around, we actually get a phone call. I'm not going to explain it because I literally can't, so just take a listen. Now you might be asking, Dxtr, what the fuck was that and why did you even show it to me? Well, dear viewer, if you reverse it, you'll hear the following, which I've added captions to. For those of you wondering what any of that means, at the time of writing, I have no idea. And by the way, that inaudible line, I'm gonna need your guys' help with that. Let me know what you think it means. I even reached out to the game's creator, and even she told me that she forgot what the line said. So that's just awesome. But I'm not quite done talking about this game just yet. No, I found something interesting hidden inside of the game. On camera 9, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance for a character by the name of Midas to appear, acting as this game's Golden Freddy, even using the same laugh and hallucination sound as him. He enters your office and his jump scare plays. I'll just let you see it for yourself. So yeah, that's disturbing. As mentioned, that character's name is Midas. I have no idea who this character is supposed to be. However, I do know that we will be finding out, as Solar Neon plans on creating 6 games in the Farley series, and I'm totally looking forward to them. There are still a few more secrets I was able to uncover. In the room where you grab a new fuse box, you'll notice a stack of papers on the ground. Upon picking the papers up, you will see one of the following 3 papers. The first shows a wanted poster for a man inside of what appears to be a bunny costume. It's only a police sketch, but we can see they're wanted for murder. The second paper reads, "Bodies found in local river." In a shocking turn of events, the body of missing boy Thomas Fiver has been found under a bridge in Shantytown. According to the Utah Police Department, Thomas's body was stuffed inside a garbage bag with his head removed. The head has still not been recovered. A note addressed to the police was also found with Thomas's body, written by the Guillotine Killer. This has been revealed to be his 3rd victim. The Guillotine Killer, possibly giving a name to the killer in the previous paper, obviously being called that name for decapitating his victims. Another kid killer. Fantastic, but what did we expect, I suppose? And victim number 3. I wonder how many there are in total. The 3rd paper reads, 6 children now reported missing. Over the coming weeks, 6 children have vanished in Shantytown, Utah. While 2 of the missing children have no leads, it is believed that they are further victims of the infamous Guillotine Killer. Utah Police Chief Edward Cal has stated that they are expecting letters from the killer soon, potentially tying the 2 other children to his spree. Police are hoping to apprehend the killer soon. Well, that answers my question. 6 children this time around. Quite the hefty number, but nothing compared to my 12, but that's not important. What is important is that I lied and there's actually 1 other paper to be found. However, the only way you can get it is if you've been attacked by Midas. So, 1 in 10,000. Your chances aren't great, but lucky you, I'll just show you what the paper is. So it appears Midas came from another restaurant by the name of Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace. Also on this paper, you can see some possible other names for this character, being able to make out Mike, Monty, and Max. As you can tell, this is a napkin, clearly showing that this was a very early idea for a restaurant, even having multiple food ideas like burger and barbecue before settling on pizza, apparently stating that burgers are, quote, too easy to fuck up. And then of course, the sketch of Midas with his absolutely fucking massive veiny head. Disgusting, by the way. So, with the 5 other confirmed games on the way, there's still a lot to unravel this time. And you better believe I'll be here to cover it when it comes around. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Swing Shift at Farley's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most creative pieces of fan game work I've ever seen. Solar Neon is so open to trying new and unique things, and I love that. I'm super looking forward to the other 5 games, and I can't wait to cover them on Dxtr Black, and of course, over on this channel. Hold up, guys! As I was working on this video, the 2nd game in the Farley series, Swing Shift at Farley's Jr., actually released. And I thought, well, why not add that game to this video as well? So instead of ending the video right here where I was about to, let's go ahead and jump into Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. So, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I bet you were getting ready to click off the video and now we have a whole nother game to cover. Well, be grateful, I guess. Farley's Jr. starts with a very FNAF 2 style opening. We're sitting in the POV of who I can only assume to be Farley. We can look left and right and see Basil and Charlie accompanying us. Shortly after the minigame ends, we're booted to the main menu where we can see the toy animatronics. What the fuck? Like, these things literally look like the FNAF characters, but rest assured, they are not. Upon starting the game, we're greeted by a newspaper, stating that this time around we aren't monitoring a restaurant, but an entire mall. Awesome. That doesn't sound like there's about to be a metric fuck ton of characters, now does it? Night 1 has a phone call that's like 5 fucking minutes long, and I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. It's your typical Night 1 bullshit, and he explains the characters we'll have to deal with. But of course, if I just let him do that, then I wouldn't really have a job, now would I? So let's start by talking about the tools at our disposal, because there are a hell of a lot more this time around. To start, let's get the obvious out of the way. We have a Farley mask that we can use. However, you may notice the 4 buttons inside of this mask. Don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. You can also use your camera to flash the hallway in front of you for a short period of time. However, every time you do, you'll lose one film reel. Throughout the cameras, you can find film reels lying around and pick them up. Also in the cameras, you can flash and hold your light on them so that you can actually see, which is very nice. You may also notice music box symbols on a good majority of the cameras. Don't worry, we will also talk about that in a bit. But that's really it in terms of mechanics that actually matter at this point in time, which means we can move on to talking about the threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces a whopping 4 threats, already matching pretty much the entire crew of the first game, so this is about to get scary. The first ones we'll talk about are Basil Jr. and Charlie Jr., these being the toy variants of the originals. The reason I mentioned talking about both of them is because they both literally do the exact same thing, so no point in talking about them individually. If you couldn't guess because you have a brain deficiency, their goal is to make it to your office through the big hallway in front of you. Since this hallway in front of you is so dark, you won't actually be able to see them if they're there. However, there are 2 things you can do to verify if they are. To start, you can obviously flash the hallway with your camera and check. However, if you don't want to waste a film reel, there is another way. Characters in Farley's Jr. will not move backwards, so once they make it to the hallway camera, if you ever see them leave that camera, that guarantees they'll be in your hallway. So once you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is put your mask on. Except, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the buttons don't work like a normal FNAF mask. Upon a character entering your office, their eyes will glow one of 4 colors. Depending on which color they are is which color you'll have to press inside of the mask. Once you do this, their eyes will switch to another color. Repeat this process until you've pressed 4 buttons and they will finally leave your office. I don't think I need to explain to you how fucking awesome this is. Solar Neon was able to take one of the most overused FNAF mechanics of all time and add a twist to it that makes it feel new. Does it make a whole lot of sense? No, not really, but it's still really fucking awesome and I love it. The next threat this night introduces is Farley Jr. He works in the exact same way as Basil and Charlie Jr., but with one very frustrating difference. Remember how in the first game Farley would hide in your blind spots? Yeah? Well, Farley Jr. does the exact same thing, except this time around, he doesn't make sound cues when he moves. So that brings up the very appropriate question, how the hell are you supposed to know where he is? Fantastic question that is! If you look at your cameras, you'll notice a large tracker button at the top. Whenever you click that tracker, it will show you which camera Farley Jr. is currently in. However, every time you use the tracker, you have to wait an entire century to be able to use it again. This is literally the only way to tell where Farley Jr. is, so you'll have to get pretty lucky with your timings of this, especially on later nights. With the juniors out of the way, we can move on to the final threat that Night 1 introduces, that being the marionette. Oh boy, I promise you this thing is way worse than you could ever imagine. Of course, this marionette uses a music box mechanic. However, the music box is located on the desk in your office, so you don't have to open your cameras to use it, which I honestly thought was great. But is there a catch? Are you retarded? Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. The marionette can move throughout the night. The way she moves? Take a fucking guess. Exactly! At random, she'll make a sound cue signifying that she's teleported to a random camera. Another find them on the camera mechanic mixed with a music box mechanic. All right, fine. I've liked everything Solar Neon has done so far. Maybe if I look deep inside my cold, dead heart, I can find it in me to look past this. Maybe. When the marionette moves, you'll have to find which camera she went to and toggle the music box to said camera using the music box button I mentioned earlier. So while yes, you can wind it from your office, you're still not free of the worst fucking mechanic ever thought of by man. So, that was a lot to introduce in one night, and we've still got 4 or 5 more of these to go. To discover how bad it's going to get, stick around, because I get the really funny feeling that the further we jump into this game, the further my sanity is going to split. Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. Here we are on night 2, and this night is really going to show just how fucking difficult this game is about to be. This night introduces several new threats, all of which make me want to stitch my asshole shut so that I can never shit again. Let's waste no time and start talking about them. Tonight introduces the Withered characters, literally every single one of them. Well, except for one, but we'll talk about that asshole a little bit later. To start, let's talk about Withered Basil and Withered Charlie. I'm going to talk about these two together because just like their junior variants, they both fundamentally do the same thing. On night 2, you'll notice in your office you can now pull 2 gates closed on both sides of you. These gates are important for these 2 threats. Withered Basil and Charlie's goal is to get to your office through these gates. Basil will attack the left and Charlie will attack the right. Just like seemingly every other character in this game, you won't be able to see these two while they're at your doors, so you'll have to track them on the camera to be able to tell when they've disappeared to them. Once you know they're at your door, close their respective gates and wait to hear them hobble away. You know when I said their goal is to attack these doors? Well, I kind of lied because they both have one other form of attack, that being the hallway in front of you. Both characters will appear in the hallway camera. When they disappear, they will do one of 2 things. The first will be moving to a side camera to make their way to their gate. The other will be moving to your hallway just like the juniors do. When you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is flash them and they'll go away. These 2 characters alone already add a bunch of stress to this gameplay loop, especially with them being able to attack in more than one way. But we're still not done. We have yet to talk about the final threat this night introduces, the Jailhound. Jailhound is an incredibly frustrating character, mainly because he forces you to use 2 means of defense against him, both draining a crucial resource and wasting a lot of time. Jailhound can only attack through your main hallway. You'll know he's there because thankfully he'll start talking to let you know that he is there. The first thing you'll need to do is flash him, using up one of your film reels. Then, and only after you flash him, must you put your mask on. If you put the mask on beforehand, he'll kill you. This is explained by the flash disorienting him enough for the mask to fool him. Pretty interesting explanation, I will admit. Once you put the mask on, he'll enter your office for a short period and leave. Unlike the juniors, you do not have to play the Simon Says minigame inside of the mask. So yeah, a metric shitload of stuff thrown on top of you on only the second night of the game. And let me give you a little spoiler. There's a lot more characters that are going to be added to this loop. And with each one, years of my life are plucked away like nose hairs. I only want to die a lot, guys, don't worry. But I'm not quite ready to move on to night 3, as during my playthrough of night 2, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I of course died a few times trying to beat night 2 as I got used to everything. One of those times that I died, I actually got thrown into a death minigame. So let's talk about that. In this minigame, we play as a girl named Crystal. We go to the house of a man named Mr. Martinez, which, judging solely based on the color of his dialogue tech, I'm going to assume he's this game's William Afton. Crystal asks if Terrence, who I can only assume to be his son, is around, as he hasn't been answering messages. Martinez says he's been locked inside of his room after what I can only assume to be a supposed incident. Crystal apologizes about someone named Toby, and at this point, we're not totally sure who that is. Martinez allows Crystal inside to go see Terrence, but when she goes to his room, Martinez is seen pulling out a syringe and following after her, clearly showing that he's about to do something terrible. The only question we'll be left with now is why, and who is Crystal? But with that, we're ready to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, we have even more characters thrown onto our shoulders, and I'm really not excited for it. We have another duo group of attackers that pretty much do the exact same thing. So let's talk about them first. These 2 characters are Balloon Boy and JJ. Yeah, that's right. Solar made JJ an actual threat in this game rather than just the Easter egg that she is in FNAF 2. Let's talk about Balloon Boy first. He will make his way to your left gate. Of course, like every other character, you won't be able to see him in your doorway. However, you won't have to watch him on the cameras either, as every time he moves, he'll make a sound cue. And the second sound cue he makes will signal that he's at your gate, and that you either need to close it or put your mask on. Either will make him go away. JJ is identical, except she attacks the right gate instead. Now, I mentioned these 2 were slightly different, and what they do if they get into your office is how they're different, since neither of them will actually end your run directly. If Balloon Bitch makes it into your office, he will quickly leave, but not before taking every single film reel out of your camera, forcing you to have to go through all of the cameras to find more. And at this point in the game, you really don't have the time to be doing that. Now, if JJ gets into your office, she'll do something So foul, I'm trying to hold back the vomit from spewing out of my mouth just thinking about it. If JJ gets into your office, she'll steal your fucking mask off the table. She will then teleport to a random camera in which you'll have to fucking find her and click on her in order for her to return it to your desk. Oh my fucking god, that is literally the most evil thing I've ever seen a character in a FNAF game do. Oh fuck. Oh, she took the fucking mask. I'm cooked. I didn't know she took the mask. I thought that sound cue from JJ was her. I thought the sound cue from JJ was her leaving. It was not. It was her grabbing my shit. She copped me. She copped on my shit. I'd rather JJ kill 6 more children than take my shit. I'm being honest. Oh, but guess what? We're still not done because there's still 2 more threats to talk about. I know I said 3 at the start of the night, but these 2 characters are basically 1 character, which is why I'm saying there's 2 more. These characters are Candy Cadet and Astro. The fuck me silly, backwards, forwards, upside down, flip me, bend me combo. Let me explain it. So, you'll need to watch camera 10 to see when either of these 2 leave. It's important you know who leaves first. If Candy leaves, he will approach one of your gates at random. You, of course, will not be able to see him at your gate without either flashing your camera or watching the cams to see when he enters. He also makes no sound cue either, so that's great. Once he's there, you'll need to close the gate until he leaves. However, shortly after Candy Cadet attacks, Astro will attack the other door shortly after. Now, you may be wondering why I mentioned how important it is for you to know who leaves camera 10 first. Well, that's because if Astro leaves first, he'll do something a bit different. If Asshole leaves first, he too will go to either of your gates. However, when he's at your gate, he'll start singing. You need to close which gate you hear him at until he leaves. And of course, when he does, Candy Cadet Hole will soon attack the other side. These 2 add so much more unnecessary stress to this game, and Solar Neon knew exactly what she was doing when she made this. Asshole. Before we move on to night 4, I want to talk about another death minigame I got while working on this night. It's literally an exact copy of the Give Cake minigame from FNAF 2. The only major difference is that we play as Farley instead of Freddy, and instead of a random crying child, we see a girl come to the entrance who in the programming is named Charlie. Soon after, a car pulls up to the building and a man in a bunny mask gets out. Now, while I would imagine this person is probably Martinez, I do have to point out that in the code, this character's name is Guillotine. And if you remember from the first game is the name of the serial killer. So it appears we get to see the abduction before one of his many murders. But with that, we can move on to night 4. It got worse, guys. Let me tell you, it got so much worse. Way worse than I could have ever imagined. Not only does Night 4 add 2 more characters, but it also adds a brand new mechanic that makes this game far more stressful than it already was. To start, let's talk about the new mechanic, being able to turn off the power to the building. I bet you can take a solid guess where this is going. When the power is off, you obviously can't check your cameras. However, you can still put your mask on and close your gates. With that in mind, now on to the 2 threats this night introduces. Let's start with the simplest one, Mangle. Mangle has 2 ways of getting into your office, the big hallway in front of you, and the vent that's on camera 9. I've neglected to mention this vent up until this point, because Mangle is the only character to interact with it. Plus, you can't even see or interact with this vent in any way regardless. When you see Mangle in your hallway in front of you, you'll have to shut the building's power off. She'll swoop into the office for a few seconds and then leave, wherein you can then turn it back on. The vent is pretty much the same, but since you can't see the vent, the way you'll know you have to shut the power off is when you hear her in your vent. Turning off the power throughout the night when watching the cameras is so integral to this game's cycle is absolutely brutal. And the final character introduced on this night doesn't help with that at all. Withered Farley is the last character introduced on night 4, and he serves to be one of the most stressful yet. Once Withered Farley makes a successful movement opportunity, he will teleport directly to your main hall. Every time you flash the hallway, you'll be able to see him. Throughout the night, he'll slowly creep his way towards your office, and once he enters, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my intro of him, you'll have to shut the building's power off until he leaves. Mazel tov! I want to die. This is every single threat in the game. And let me tell you, completing this night was honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever put myself through. And we're not even on to night 5 yet. so I'm really not excited for all that. But there is still one thing I want to talk about before we move on to Night 5, and that's another death minigame I got while playing Night 4. In it, we play as an unknown character seemingly on a camping trip with another unknown character. Child number 2 wanders off and we go to follow him, only to go deeper and deeper into the forest as we lose track of him. When we find him again, we see him trapped in the back of someone's car as it drives off. Maybe got some inspiration from the FNAF movie, just a hunch. Shortly after, Farley jump scares us. And this leads to a small theory that I have. I get the feeling that for each of these minigames, depending on who jump scares us at the end of them is meant to hint at who the stolen child in said minigame would go on to possess. Just a hunch, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Anyways, on to Night 5, and I'm really not excited for it, I can't lie. Thankfully, Night 5 doesn't bring anything new to the table. I thank God for that every day that I wake up, because he knows better than anybody how I would have lost my mind had there been more animatronics added on this night. However, there is something very interesting to note about this night. 1, I never got a death minigame like I was hoping for, but that's fine. And 2, something very interesting happens once you complete the night. I'll let Dxtr Black take it away. Subscribe, by the way. Woo! Oh! I need to relax. Wait, what? Mangle still kills you? What the fuck? That's right. Mangle kills you. And when reading the newspaper after the fact, we see that we've been playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald this whole time. Wowee! I'm leaking. What? But with the information of our player now being dead, who's to say what's going to happen on Night 6? I'm not sure, and I'm very, very excited. Night 6 is pretty interesting, so let's just jump right into it. To start, we're now playing as Mr. Martinez, both the man who was holding the syringe in an earlier death minigame we talked about, and the man I suspect to be the guillotine killer. In our phone call, we actually get to hear the conversation between Mr. Martinez and the phone guy, and I think listening to it for yourself will be much better than me describing it to you.
Fancy seeing you there, Mr. Martinez. And on a night like tonight.
Why are you interrupting my night, Gretchen?
You tell me, Vincent. Poking around my mall, and during an active investigation, no less. God. You know, I gave you a lot of time. More than I've given most of my vendors. But no. First your hunks of metal fuck with my staff. Then those kids go missing. The cops start ripping my business up. That poor Jeremy kid gets his head smashed in by one of your freaks. The one you told me you would fix. And I now find you there, doing God knows what.
Now what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, I think you've got a pretty damn fine clue.
Are you threatening me, Gretchen? I'm not sure baseless accusations are a good look for you.
Then let me make it simple. If you're not out by the time I get there, I'll throw you out myself.
Is that right now?
Yeah, it is. Want to know why? Because I've been in this business long enough to know what scum is. Whatever mess you've made, I want it cleaned up. Otherwise, the police might be expecting a little tip soon.
I think this further adds to my confirmation that yes, Mr. Martinez is 100% the guillotine killer and this game's Afton. This night really serves to be a much harder version of Night 5. However, to my surprise, one new character is actually added, that being Midas, the secret character from the first game. He acts in the exact same way as Golden Freddy does in FNAF 2. Occasionally, when you drop your monitor, he'll be in your office. If you don't raise your monitor again fast enough, he'll kill you, easily becoming the most frustrating character in this game in my opinion, as the crazy amount of shit going on is already hard enough to keep track of in your head, but adding this bullshit guy on top of it really serves to make my head explode. However, it did lead to my crazy completion of Night 6. Fuck, I'm dead. What? Holy shit! Tell me that's not the craziest completion you've ever seen. Yeah, I thought so. But with that, Farley's Jr. closes down due to a bunch of bullshit that was completely expected, and Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. comes to a close. At least, that would be the case if we didn't have a bit more lore stuff to talk about, since with Midas actually showing up, I'm sure you could have assumed there's some stuff I was able to find. To start, by going into the extras menu and checking out the characters, moving over to the withered characters, you'll actually see missing posters for each of them, adding to my theory of depending on who jump scares you equating to who the dead child possessed, with Garrett possessing Farley, Charlie Emily possessing Basil, Terrence Martinez and Crystal possessing Jailhound, and an unknown person possessing Charlie. Why is this unknown? Well, because I never actually got Charlie's death minigame. But let's go take a look at it, shall we? In this minigame, we play as Susie Rosa. We walk around town until we eventually stumble across our dog, dead in the middle of the road, clearly being hit by a car. Shortly after, a car pulls up next to us and the guillotine killer steps out, telling us that he can fix our dog if we get in the car with him. And I'm sure you can imagine what he does to her next. And speaking of minigames, there's still plenty to cover. Let's rapid fire through the minigames I never got in my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, starting with the minigame called Riverbed. We play as an unnamed little boy in the rain. We walk past the place where Susie's dog was killed, and continuing forward, we see the guillotine killer dropping the body of presumably one of his victims in the lake before he is then attacked. And if you remember, this is probably his third victim, which was referenced in one of the papers in Farley's 1. The next minigame is called Save Them. We play as Withered Farley as we follow the marionette through the building. She spells out save them as we travel, but before we can get to the exit, the killer steps in and smashes the marionette to pieces. And finally, we have Late Night, a minigame that's really just a cutscene. We watch a mother talking on a payphone while her daughter is clearly trying to get her attention. Eventually, she wanders off, only for us to see the killer's car whiz by, presumably, I would imagine, hitting her with it, although no sound cue is heard to indicate that. The mother goes to look for her, and then we get jump scared by the marionette, which would tell me that this little girl would go on to possess her. Oh yeah, there actually is another minigame that I got, I just didn't mention it for some reason, so I'll mention it now. It's called I'm Sorry. This one is also just a cutscene, and in a much different style from the others. A boy is sitting in the hospital with Mr. Martinez. They're watching the corpse of an unknown person completely wrapped in gauze. Looking back at Martinez, we see this unsettling image. And with that, that's all of the cutscenes in this game covered. However, we're still not quite done talking about stuff I was able to find. To start, there are several newspaper articles to read just like in the first game. Each appears at random when you click the paper stack in your office. They read, Marvelous Mimic Man. The winner of the 1995 Henton's Robotic Fair has been announced to be Vincent Martinez's Marvelous Mimic Man. This robot won due to its impressive state-of-the-art AI that allows it to near perfectly mimic the actions and poses of anyone around it. Vincent Martinez, the proud creator of the Mimic Man, has made a statement on winning first place. I am honored to receive this award. Thank you to the judges and especially the voters who made this happen. I hope to show you more of the Mimic Man and other creations like him soon. Farley's closes its doors. Lawsuit from Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated closes down beloved family restaurant. After a long and grueling trial, Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated has won its lawsuit against New Edge Incorporated, the owners of Farley's Fun Zone. The lawsuit alleges that New Edge Incorporated not only plagiarized multiple of its characters, but also stole confidential blueprints and schematics for their animatronic mascots. As a result of New Edge losing the lawsuit, they have been ordered to pay Showbiz Pizza Incorporated $3 million in damages. While New Edge has yet to make a statement, their decision to shut all of their 10 Farley's Fun Zone locations has sent a clear message. Obituaries. Abigail Leslie Emily, September 5th, 1954 to July 30th, 1985. Abigail was born on September 5th of 1954. She grew up in a lovely house down north before moving to Utah and marrying a brilliant husband and having a lovely daughter, both of which were unfortunately taken away from her too soon. Abigail tragically killed herself on the 30th of July, 1985 via a self-inflicted gunshot to the head.
We hope that Abigail is in the warm light and with her husband and daughter.
So, a robot that can mimic people made by Martinez, a plagiarism lawsuit for blueprints and schematics, and a woman who tragically killed herself, each with something redacted. And of course, after getting killed by Midas, there is an additional paper you can read. Tragedy at Midas's. 10-year-old boy bitten by animatronic. This afternoon at Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace, one 10-year-old boy, Tobias Martinez, was bitten by one of the establishment's animatronic characters. It was reported that he was shoved inside its mouth by 4 children who have yet to be identified. Police have not yet confirmed if this is a murder attempt or freak accident, although they are still investigating. Tobias is reportedly in critical condition, with his frontal lobe nearly severed. The owners of Midas's New Edge Incorporated have yet to make public statement on the matter, aside from suspending all operations at the restaurant. Tobias Martinez was bitten and killed at Midas's. I wonder if this isn't the person we see in the hospital bed in the I'm Sorry minigame, as this is clearly this game's equivalent to the Fredbear bite. And since we're drawing parallels, let's draw another one. In the weird phone call all the way in Farley's 1, the first line mentions a riverbed. And what do we see in one of the death minigames? That's right, the guillotine killer throwing a body into a riverbed. Whose body this is, though? No other than Thomas Fiver, Martinez's 3rd victim. But with that, as far as I'm aware, is everything that the first 2 Farley's games have to offer. I'm incredibly excited for the rest of the series that Solar has planned, and she's actually shown me a sneak peek of the 3rd game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but it looks crazy. Overall, both of the Farley's games are clearly heavily inspired by the original FNAF games, and even seem to be following the original pattern and story these games laid out. And I honestly really like it. Recently, I've been covering a lot of very well-known fan games on this channel. Five Nights at Candy's, Pop Goes, and Animatronic Memories are probably names you're all familiar with. Recently, I've been looking for a FNAF game to cover that I personally had never heard of, and today I've definitely found one. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's super weird, but however, it does have its charm and an amazing story. So, let's waste no time and hop right into Tales of the Bunnyman. Tales of the Bunnyman opens with a cutscene that reminds me a lot of the old official Five Nights at Freddy's trailers, specifically Five Nights at Freddy's 2. We get several shots of the pizzeria interlaced with pieces of dialogue explaining the exposition of the story. We play as a man named Vincent Baldwin, who we later learn used to be a night guard and is one of the missing children's fathers, the father of Cassidy. We're entering the building to do some investigating and find out where our missing child went. And with our motive in mind, we're safe to head into Night 1 and start talking about what this game really has to offer. Night 1 introduces 2 characters, but before I start talking about them, I want to talk about the office itself. In our office, the first thing I want to get out of the way is this picture. I don't know who this is. I checked the wiki and couldn't figure out who this is. That's it. I just don't know who this is. Anyways, on to something actually important. The coolest thing I noticed about this office is that there are actually 2 rooms that we can move between. The typical office room and the boiler room. I'll talk more about the boiler room later when it becomes important. The door to the boiler room can be held shut, as animatronics will actually have to travel through it in order to get to your office. The only other things in our office is our camera system and a giant gift box. We can hide inside of this gift box to be able to protect ourselves from the first major threat of this night, Foxy. Foxy behaves pretty much exactly the same as in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. He starts on Pirate's Cove and makes his way through some phases before attacking. However, something unique about Foxy is he actually has 2 completely different attacks he can perform, each of which requires you to do something completely different to counteract him. The first attack he has is pretty simple. After he leaves Pirate's Cove, he will charge towards your office. When he does, you'll have to quickly jump inside the present until you hear him run away, after which you can jump back out and continue. His other attack is unfortunately a mechanic I've grown to dislike more and more as I play FNAF games. After leaving Pirate's Cove, Foxy has a chance to appear randomly on one of your cameras. When he does, all you have to do is find him and stare at him until he goes back to Pirate's Cove. This is mainly a me thing, but I've personally grown tired of the find them on the cameras mechanic. Yes, I do play Five Nights at Freddy's for a living, so yes, I'm going to see repeated mechanics a lot. Most sane people don't play as much Five Nights at Freddy's as I do, so most people won't find this mechanic to be that big of a deal, but hey, at least it's not a stupid fucking music box mechanic. We'll talk about that later. The only other threat introduced on this night is Bonnie. Bonnie is incredibly simple in how he works, as is typical in most FNAF games that feature him. Bonnie will make his way through the building and to your office. Afterwards, you'll be able to hear him at your door. You'll need to quickly go up to the door and hold it shut until you hear him leave, like Five Nights at Freddy's 4. When you do, you'll know it's safe to reopen the door and continue the night. Very basic. That's just how we like Bonnie, isn't it, guys? Right? You like it when Bonnie's basic, right? You wouldn't want Bonnie to just hot bottom right into your office and start fingering you, would you? Freak. And with that, we can move on to the post-night 1 minigame. Here's where we get to talking a lot about how cool this game really is. This game does narrative storytelling in a different way than any other FNAF game I've ever seen. Instead of an 8-bit minigame or a slideshow lore dump, Tales of the Bunnyman turns into a visual novel during the post-night sections, having you play in the perspective of a different character each night. I think this is actually super cool. While yes, you may think that it looks straight out of a My Hero Academia DeviantArt fan page, it is very clear that an amazing amount of care and effort went into these post-night sections, and that cannot go unnoticed. Before I really start talking about the lore of this game, I need to make it incredibly clear that there was so much poured into this story. There's so many details that I could point out that would make this video quite literally take hours to complete. And while I'd love to be able to talk about all of it, I don't have the confidence in myself to do so, and to be able to portray it in the way that it rightfully deserves. I'll be going over what happens in the story, but I won't be diving into every single minute detail, and I apologize if you were hoping that I would. Anyways, in this minigame, we play in the perspective of Jeremy Jr. Fitzgerald. After hanging out with his friends at Freddy Fazbear's, he notices that his mom has not yet come to pick him up. After waiting an extended period of time, he decides to just watch the performance on stage. Hearing a strange whistling coming from backstage, he enters to investigate, only to abruptly get abducted and murdered by the Bunnyman, going on to possess Bonnie. I honestly think that these post-night minigames are a breath of fresh air in this genre. I've never seen anything like it before, and I'd love to see more FNAF games try to do something new like this to tell their story. But now it's time for us to move on to Night 2. Night 2 only introduces one new thread, that being Chica. Chica does exactly what you'd expect her to do, and no, I don't mean eating until she pops like a balloon. What I really mean is moving through the cameras and then going to your office. Oh my fucking god, that is gross. Yuck. Fucking yuck, bro. She does go through one additional camera compared to Bonnie, making you see her less often than him, but other than that, she's exactly the same as Bonnie. I'll also use this night to talk about the only thing I dislike about this game. The mouse. Oh my god, this mouse is atrocious. Oh no, this mouse is really bad. If you're at all familiar with my channel, you'll already know that the way the mouse works is always something I'll have a problem with when fan games try to switch it up. In most FNAF games, when you move your mouse to the side of the screen will scroll in that direction until it hits the end of your office. That makes sense, and this is good. Tales of the Bunnyman instead decided to take a route similar to Sister Location. If you are to move your mouse to one side of the screen in Tales of the Bunnyman, your mouse won't follow the moving office. Instead, the game will keep track of its simulated X and Y positions in the office. And while this may sound super cool, in practice it leads to you having to move your mouse all the way across your desk or increasing your mouse's sensitivity to be able to make up for it. Is this nitpicky? Yes. But I am giving my opinion on a game, so I think it's important to talk about things that I notice, especially when it's the main interaction mechanic in the entire game. Anyways, moving on to the post-Night 2 minigame, where we play in the perspective of Susie Sutherland. The group of friends were supposed to play the newly installed arcade game Pop Goes versus the Machinist? 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 Mechanist? Machinist? I don't know. Instead, she decides to split up from the group to go look for Bonnie. Walking around the building, we can talk to a kid named Ollie, who mentions something about Bonnie acting weird recently. Given the timeline of the events this game has, I'm fairly certain that this cutscene is taking place 16 days after Jeremy's disappearance. So I think it's safe to say that Jeremy at this point in time is already inside of the Bonnie costume. During this minigame is when Susie can also find a VHS tape relating to Edwin Murray. If you couldn't already tell, this game's story is heavily entwined with the official FNAF games. Later, Susie heads over to Pirate's Cove to get a peek at Foxy, getting startled by William inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. It's at this point I need to mention two things. One, why is this specific camera in the post nights a 3D render instead of the usual 2D drawing? And two, why is William the only character in the entire game to have voice acting? Mr. Afton, don't scare me like that.
Now, what's a missy like you doing snooping around a pirate's property?
Why is he voice acting? I'm much more curious about my second question. I was a little caught off guard when I first heard him speak, since, again, nobody in the game thus far ever has. But regardless, that's not very important. After a brief, uncomfortable conversation with Afton, we meet up with our friends again at the new arcade machine, and as we play the game, we're seen being stalked by the Bunny Man. If you couldn't already guess, Susie Sutherland goes on to possess Chica. Now it's time to talk about Night 3, which introduces one new threat, Freddy and the Marionette. Now, pause. Let's just stop for a moment and talk about Freddy first, okay? Freddy, like Foxy, has two different attacks. We'll talk about the more simple one first. Freddy will make his way through the cameras and enter your boiler room. The reason he does so is to attempt to cut the power, because doing so will allow for the Marionette to come spread your buns and lick up your crack. To prevent this from happening, we will have to enter the boiler room and hold our flashlight on his face, causing him to bug out and leave the boiler room. However, before he does, we actually get to see him creepily tilt his body. Such a small detail, but I actually really like it. Now we can talk about the other mechanic Freddy has that I originally thought was going to make me want to skin an elephant. As previously mentioned, it's clear that Freddy wants to assist in helping the Marionette grope us. So, Freddy's other attack is him going to the music box to fuck up the Marionette's sleep schedule. Fun fact, I used to work a graveyard shift at a news station, and let me tell you, you don't want to fuck with nobody's sleep schedule, bro. So, in order to save the Marionette's sanity, we must remotely shut down the music box before Freddy can finish. Moving on to the Night 3 post-night minigame, we play in the perspective of Fritz Smith II. Let me tell you, this guy is a big fan of Foxy. So much so that he insists on constantly talking like a pirate, something that made me want to eat my own lungs throughout my playthrough because I was writhing in cringe. A.S. the worst one. It be fixin' to be jolly. What the fuck does that mean? Fritz leaves the group to go look for Foxy. Going to Pirate's Cove, he finds a decommissioned Foxy behind the curtains. Additionally, he finds a diary written by Henry. I guess for some reason, this is where Henry goes to vent, right next to the fucked up looking robot. A little weird, Henry, but you do you, boo. Inside of the diary, we read that Henry is struggling to cope with the loss of his daughter and his theory about Jeremy and Susie's disappearances having something to do with each other. Little did he know how right he truly was. Whilst continuing to read the diary, the Bunny Man appears behind him and drags him into the back room, all while taunting him, saying that he thought he was more interested in Foxy than Henry's diary. Fritz would go on to possess Foxy. Moving on to Night 4, we get to talk about a very odd threat, Balloon Boy. Yes, for some reason, Balloon Boy is in this game. Don't question it. I guess the developer of this game just hates fun. Balloon Boy isn't a very difficult threat to deal with, thankfully, instead serving more of an annoyance, which is very fitting for his character. Balloon Boy can only appear in two rooms in the entire game, the boiler room and your backstage camera. you'll have to listen out for a vent sound cue. When you hear it, you'll have to travel to the back room and find where Balloon Boy is, because unlike Freddy, he has multiple different locations that he can stand in. Once you find Balloon Boy, just like Freddy, all you have to do is hold your flashlight on him until he goes away. I'm really not entirely sure why Balloon Boy exists in this game. I have yet to find any story reason for it either. Maybe it's just a popular character to put into the game, or maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. I'm not really sure, but hey, let's move on to the post-night 4 minigame. In this minigame, we play as Gabriel Collins. Gabriel sneaks into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza because he has a hunch that his missing friends are still inside. Once he enters, he searches the location, eventually discovering the marionette. They quickly become friends and begin exploring the establishment together. Eventually, they stumble across Michael and William Afton. William is trying to convince Michael to work as a performer, playing the character of Bonnie. But before we can hear anything else, William spots us. He chases us through the building, and the marionette hides us in its gift box. However, unfortunately for Gabriel, William finds him anyway and is knocked out. He wakes up inside of the Freddy Fazbear costume, watching William Afton jump around the dining room, mocking him through his last breaths. Gabriel would then go on to possess Freddy. This is easily one of the most fucked up cutscenes throughout the entire game. I'm no edgelord, as some people seem to think I am, but I really enjoy when games show us the depraved things that the villains do. I and many others don't want to just hear about things happening, we want to see them as well. Of course, I don't think we all want to literally see the children getting murdered, but I think showing off the situations in the way that Tales of the Bunnyman does is incredibly interesting. Next, we get to move on to Night 5, the final main night in Tales of the Bunnyman. This night adds Fredbear, an interesting but fitting final character choice. Fredbear acts as an everything character, being able to take on the role of every animatronic besides Balloon Boy and Foxy. However, unlike most everything nights that take place in other FNAF games, Fredbear is active alongside each other animatronic, adding one more layer of stress to the nights. Again, he doesn't have any unique mechanics by himself, but this time I'm honestly okay with that, only because the other characters are still active. It's at this point I want to bring up something I should have brought up a long time ago: the character designs. From what I've seen, the community seems to be pretty split on their opinions of these character designs. A lot of people love them and think that in combination with the grungy environment, it makes them look very creepy. However, on the other hand, I've seen plenty of people who think that the designs look unprofessional and seemingly come out of a game that came out many years ago. I personally have no problems with the character designs. I think they look creepy and uncomfortable. However, I do think that the texturing on the characters does look a bit odd, but nothing that I feel takes away from the immersion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Also, since I'm being a little meta right now, go subscribe to my new channel, Dxtr Gray. I cover non-FNAF horror games over there, and we have a lot of fun. Anyways, moving on to the final post-night minigame, where we play in the perspective of Cassandra Baldwin, or better known, Cassidy. Now, noticing that she's the only member of her friend group that hasn't gone missing, she vows to figure out what happened to them and find where they all disappeared to. Entering the back room, she finds a Fredbear plushie which, throughout the game, has been shown to be able to teleport on its own, and yet, for some reason, nobody felt like that was weird at all. This is really the only gripe I have with this story, the plushie teleporting around, and multiple people know about this, yet nobody is at all a little concerned about it. On top of that, it is literally never once elaborated on or explained why this happens. I can't even draw a conclusion because there's quite literally no reason, but let's try to put that behind us for a moment and continue. We do know that the plushie is being used by Afton to lure Cassidy into the back room. Now, pause. I know I just said there's literally no reason given as to why it's teleporting, and you may be questioning why I said that even though I just stated that William was using it to lure Cassidy. However, that still doesn't explain how it was fucking teleporting, and still doesn't explain why nobody gave that a second thought. Anyways, Cassidy is successfully lured into the back room. Scared, Cassidy runs out of the pizzeria and later returns for a Halloween party. I know that's not what that says, I'm sorry. As she explores, she's found by the bunny man who presumably knocks her out after stating, "You forgot me." She awakens to find herself inside of the Fredbear costume. William explains that originally he planned to save the Fredbear costume for Henry, but decided to use it for Cassidy instead. During their conversation, it's revealed that Vincent, the character that we've been playing as in the night sections, according to William, is a terrible night guard, which would technically leave him responsible for not noticing the children's disappearances on the camera, since every action that William had been taking was done under the constant surveillance of those cameras, including what's happening right now in front of us. This would give us a perfect reason as to why he's returning to the restaurant now to find his daughter, because he didn't watch her like he was supposed to. He never saw what happened. Afterwards, we get one last cutscene. Vincent walks up to the Fredbear animatronic and realizes it's his daughter. However, he trips and falls, which leads to him getting killed by his own daughter, and Tales of the Bunny Man abruptly comes to a close. Almost. There's actually one more thing to talk about, that being Night 6, or as this game calls it, the epilogue. In it, after completing the final challenge, which is just a harder version of Night 5, we see the line, "He finally found the suit that will become his tomb, the last lingering piece of his soul. A good song never dies." With that, we get to watch William's spring lock failure and onlook as he bleeds out. We're shown that Vincent, our character, was found dead inside of Freddy Fazbear's, and several news outlets labeled him as the reason the kids were murdered. I can't lie to you guys, I'm really eager to talk about this story, since after reading into it, I actually think it's really good, and it's clear that a bunch of effort was put into it. But like I said previously, I'm just not confident in my abilities to do it for myself. I've tossed around the idea of just reading the highly detailed explanation on the wiki that was written by somebody that was far more talented than I am, but I've decided against doing that since I don't want to come off as lazy and uninspired. And as much as I hate saying this, I'd highly recommend you go to the wiki and read up on it. It's actually such an amazingly well-written story, and I think it might just be one of the best takes on the official FNAF story I've ever seen. Overall, I think Tales of the Bunny Man is an enjoyable experience. The post-night minigames are interesting, and the story is fantastic and told in a way that isn't overtly confusing like most FNAF games like to be. However, I do think that the actual gameplay mechanics are pretty lackluster. Not only does each character not really have synergy with one another, this game is also just too easy. Throughout the nights, it never really feels like the characters are becoming more aggressive, which tends to lead to boring nights where you're just waiting for the much more enjoyable minigame sections. A plot twist is a literary technique that introduces a radical change in the direction or expected outcome of the plot in a work of fiction. Now tell me, can you think of a horror game that pulls off an insane twist? Maybe Resident Evil 8 in its crazy twist comes to mind. Now let me ask you another question. Can you name a FNAF game with a crazy twist? A twist so cool you have to sit back and think, wow, that was pretty sick. The game I'll be covering today has one of those twists, and I'm incredibly excited to share with you the amazing experience I had while playing Showman's The Awakening. For those of you already familiar with this game, you may know that it actually has a game that came before it. Kinda. Years ago, the same developer released a game called Phobia: The Awakening, using the Wiggles as inspiration for the characters. Well, turns out the dev wanted to remake their game using their own original characters to continue the story, so now here we are with Showman's. This may lead you to ask the question, if I've already played Phobia, is there even a point to playing Showman's? And trust me, this is a question I've asked myself. Originally, I saw people asking me to play Showman's. I played Phobia on my second channel, Dxtr Black, not knowing at the time that Showman's was a thing, learning soon after the first episode went up that it was in fact a thing. So I questioned, does it even bother to play it? Well, recently I've made the decision to do exactly that and give Showman's a try. And let's just say, if you've played Phobia, play Showman's. It's everything phobia is and more. So join me as we quake our asses into Showman's The Awakening. In Showman's, we play as a guy named Mark Ward, an employee of Showman's Pizza Place. And in night 1, we're introduced to 2 of the animatronics that will be trying to insert their fingers into orifices we'd really prefer they keep their grubby little hands away from. But before we can talk about them, we should talk about the tools at our disposal. Something really interesting you'll notice about the office is that you're able to look everywhere. Up, down, left, right, behind you, below you. It's actually really cool. It's really the first thing I noticed jumping into the game. The reason for this is actually because Showman's wasn't created in ClickTeam Fusion like most FNAF games are. Instead, it was created in Blender, which is what most FNAF games use to model their characters, and is something I also had no idea could be used to program a game. So that was pretty cool learning for the first time. Anyways, you'll see 2 large hallways on your left and right, which you can light up using buttons on your desk. In front of you is this lady. Hey, hottie. She's not hot, I'm not even gonna lie, she's not even bad. Who we'll be talking about later in the video. And if you look behind you, you'll be able to see the clock where you can tell how much longer of the night you have to get through. Oh yeah, and of course, there's cameras, because it really wouldn't be a FNAF game without those. With that out of the way, now we can talk about the first 2 threats this game introduces, Johnny and Harry. Now I know, those names aren't very normal sounding when thinking in terms of Five Nights at Freddy's, when usually we're having names so utterly stupid you'd be forced to think they were a fictional character. But no, these 2 are still robots, and you still cannot have intercourse with them, so please remove all thoughts of that nature from your head for the remainder of this video. Johnny and Harry both start from the show stage and do the exact same thing. Johnny will move through the cameras to your right hallway, and Harry will move through your left hallway, where they will then enter what I'm going to be calling their attack mode. During their attack mode, they have 5 phases. Each phase has a sound cue, and it's important that you're listening for them. With each phase, they'll move closer and closer towards your office, with the final phase having them walk up to you. Obviously, you can check their distance by flashing the light at them, and by doing so, you will also temporarily stun them in place. However, I would highly recommend you don't turn the lights on when they're in the hall, as I personally feel it's much more efficient to just let them attack you so they can piss off as fast as possible. Every time Johnny or Harry enters a new phase, their eyes will glow for a short time after their sound cue plays. So when you hear it, you can just turn in the direction to double check that they've moved. On these earlier nights, you really don't have to be super careful with them. Flashing lights and not counting sound cues isn't really important since they're your only threats. So I'll get into a bit of a better strategy for them later on. However, once they enter your office, you'll have to quickly throw on a spare mask to fool them into walking away, just like the animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And that's really it. Night 1 is pretty damn easy, really just introducing the basics needed to understand 2 very important mechanics. After beating Night 1, we see a cutscene, something that was not originally in Phobia. In it, we meet with the founder of Showman's, Jason Baker. He confirms with us that only Johnny and Harry were active on our shift, and we confirm. Apparently, this should not be happening, and it's a known issue. So that's good at least. Jason tells us that a previous employee mentioned more characters moving, which in all honesty doesn't bode well for my anus, given the fact we still have 5 more nights of this to deal with. But we get our things and go home for the night, only to come back to work in the morning. Night 2 introduces 2 new animatronics, and let me tell you, this is where the game starts to show how much of a pain in the dick it's about to become. The first character we should talk about is the fine shite sitting in front of us, Peggy. Peggy reminds me a lot of the scrapped animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, just given the fact of the way she moves subtly like them. She also reminds me a lot of what Anissa's husband really doesn't want her to do to him. Whenever you're not looking at her, whether that be checking on the cameras, looking at the hallways, or checking the clock behind you, Peggy has a chance to advance phases. You'll be able to see her start by looking down and slowly transfer through the phases until she's ready to attack. In order to reset her, all you have to do is flip the breaker switch on your desk to shock her and she'll reset. But be careful not to just spam this lever over and over, because every time you shock her, she becomes more aggressive, leading to the end of nights becoming incredibly stressful due to how fast she'll be attacking you. Cap'n Cackle is the other menace introduced on Night 2. He is this game's Foxy. If you couldn't tell by looking at him, he's a pirate. just like Foxy. Also, he looks like he's cracked out of his fucking mind. Zooted to the fucking moon. Seriously, look at this geeked out motherfucker. Holy shit, bro hasn't slept in 18 days. Look at those eye bags. What the hell happened? Stop looking at me, dude. Tell me that guy doesn't smoke crystal meth. Look at those fucking eyes. What are you doing? Hey. That's the face I make when I'm about to eat ass, bro. Anyways, similar to Foxy, he'll have several phases on camera 6. Watching him will slow his progression and even in some cases make him go backwards. If he happens to leave camera 6, he doesn't do exactly what Foxy does. Instead, he'll just start moving through your cameras like any other character would, albeit very quickly. If you manage to stare at him in one of those other cameras, he will go back to camera 6, where you can continue oogling at him to make him stay put. Both Peggy and Cap and Cackle work very well together, and the same goes for Johnny and Harry. We have 2 other central characters left to introduce, and you'll notice that those 2 also work very well in tandem with one another. This is something I need to give this game praise for. It is so incredibly good at introducing new mechanics in a way that's stressful, yet engaging and fun. You introduce Peggy, a character that moves when you don't look at her, and Cap and Cackle, another character who moves when you're not looking at him. And because these 2 characters are in different places, it forces you to learn how to balance them together. God, it's so fucking cool. Similar to last night, this night also has a cutscene after completion. In it, we're seen walking to the exit of the building. We hear a noise and quickly turn around to see an unknown animatronic staring back at us. It stares for a while before turning around and walking away. This is a character we haven't yet seen. Even the characters we'll be talking about on later nights can be seen on the cameras all the time, but this one can't. Keep him in the back of your head as he'll become important later. For now, let's move on to Night 3. Night 3 only introduces one character, but it also introduces another incredibly important mechanic, that being your vents. The animatronic introduced on Night 3 is Tony the Chef. He will enter your vents. You'll notice on your cameras that you have 3 camera vents. Tony can enter 2 of them, those being either camera 12 or camera 11. In these vents, he will have multiple phases he will move through before attempting to enter your office. With each movement, a very quiet sound cue will play, a stark contrast to Phobia, where the sound cue was very noticeable. By double-clicking on a vent cam, you can lock the vent. Locking a vent uses no power because the game has no power to begin with. Praise God. Once a vent is closed, you can keep it closed as long as you'd like, with no consequences. The only downside is that you can only close one vent at a time. So this night really isn't all too different from Night 2. Well, now's the time when I want to talk about sound cue counting with Johnny and Harry, as it's this night where you'll probably want to start getting used to doing that. As I mentioned earlier, Johnny and Harry each have 5 different phases in your hallway. The first is when they initially enter the hallway. You'll be able to tell because you can see their eyes in the hallway for a brief moment, and because you'll be able to hear their big ol' feet stomping around, kind of like I want Toy Chica to stomp on my testicles. Once one of them enters your hallway, you can stop checking on them and focus on listening. Start a mental count of 3 in your head. All sounds in this game are directional, so that really helps. Whenever you hear footsteps on either side of you, decrease that side's number by 1. Once the counter reaches 0, you know that the next time you hear footsteps from that side is when they'll walk into your office to attack. Okay, 4 left, or 3 till he's at the last stage. 2 left until he hits door. Okay, 1 more. And he's at the line. He's walking the thin line. 1 more. I want to see how close I can cut it. Hi. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that. Doing this while they're both attacking you at the same time can get a little overwhelming, and on later nights they do like to attack together a lot. But if you can nail this counting strategy, they really shouldn't be too much of an issue. After completing Night 3, we get to watch another lovely cutscene. In it, we're looking through the factory for who the fuck knows what. We open a crate and find a Johnny plush inside. Seeing this toy seems to trigger some primal instinct in us, and we pass the fuck out. Honestly, bro, probably not the greatest place to lose consciousness, I'm not even gonna front. We awake in another room, only to look up and see Showman, Scared as shit, we wake up from our slumber only to realize it was a short dream we had after we had passed out. There is clearly something mentally wrong with our dear beloved Mark. We just have to figure out what it is. Night 4 introduces the man himself, Showman. Showman works in perfect tandem with Tony, also attacking your vents. Although, unlike Tony, Showman can only attack your camera 13 vent. However, he also fucking loves to do this at the same time that Tony is jumping penis first into your vents. Showman only has 3 phases in the vent before attacking, so notably faster than Tony. So while both of them are attacking your vent, you really have to be counting their positions to figure out whose vent you need to close first, because once again, you can only have one closed at a time. If one of those fuckers get into your office, they're gonna crank that soldier boy and clock you in the jaw. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on and hope to God. Okay, so it didn't work. I couldn't tell which one was closer, bro. I thought the guy I had blocked off was closer. I couldn't tell. All in all, each character is incredibly easy to deal with. But because of how perfectly they all work together, it can lead to an incredibly stressful experience trying to play against all of them at the same time. However, never at any point throughout my playthrough did I feel like this game was unfair or that RNG was too much of a factor. This game, dare I say it, might have borderline perfect video game balancing. After completing Night 4, of course, we get another cutscene. This one taking place before we go to work for the night. Before we enter our car, we get a call from Jason, telling us not to come in to work tonight. He says things are getting too dangerous and that it would be unsafe for us to go through our shift. We agree to not go in tonight, except the plot twist is that I fucking lied and we're gonna go in anyways, because we hate authority like a 16-year-old white boy from the suburbs. On Night 5, we get a call from the phone guy, and let me tell you, he is absolutely pissed that we decided to come in for the night. He explains that anything in that building that moves will be demolished in the morning. He tells us to do whatever it is we're trying to do and get out, because they're not going to send anyone into the building to get us out. Other than that, Night 5 is exactly what you'd think it is, just a much more difficult version of Night 4, really testing your reflexes and especially your nerve control. But on this night is when I have to bring up really the only problem I have with this game. Volume. This game is actually the loudest fucking game on planet Earth. Holy shit. Everything makes noise, and it makes a damn lot of it at that. There are typically ambient sounds in FNAF games, but for the love of God, this game plays intense music throughout most of the night, and it is loud as dick and balls. Want to hear the best part? As you get closer and closer to 6 a.m., the music adds more components and gets even fucking louder! This really doesn't help when so much of my strategy revolved around listening to sound cues. It's fucking crazy just how loud this game is! Now granted, was this something that was intended? Most definitely. And I'm not even saying that it's a bad thing, because obviously, inherently, it isn't. I was still able to beat the game just fine, and I feel like most other people would be able to beat it just fine as well. But this is something I couldn't not talk about. I love this game, but of course I'm not going to always be able to glaze everything I see, and I think this is truly the only flaw this game has. But hey, who gives a fuck about what I think? Let's move on to the cutscene, baby. Let me just say, I love this cutscene. I think everything about it is great. The pacing, the acting, everything is just so good that I don't want to ruin it by just talking about it. I'd much rather just show you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, put your hands together for our birthday boy!
Please, just leave me alone. Please.
Well, god damn. We really should have listened and not come back, huh? So, it's safe to say that our pal Mark really got fucked here. Something I think is actually really cool. It's fairly common for FNAF games to have a character die in them, most commonly a phone guy, but to actually see it like this is just awesome. Going into night 6, we actually get a cutscene before the night happens rather than after it. In it, we play as the phone guy going into the building to get Mark. After a bit of searching, we find him, and once again, I think it'll just sit much better with you if you just watch it for yourself.
Mark? Is that you?
You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You should have done that shit. Oh, fuck.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
What do I do? Keep yourself together.
Are you fucking me? That's right. Turns out Mark isn't dead, but is just kind of possessed. Phone guy, or his real name, Matthew, runs back to the office with Mark on the pursuit, and night 6 begins. Night 6 consists of 4 threats, 2 of which we've already covered, Cap and Cackle and Peggy. However, you'll immediately notice that they both look pretty fucked up. Why is this? Well, turns out by demolish the animatronics, they really meant set the whole fucking building on fire. Because once again, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without a fire, right? Oh yeah, and of course, they are way more aggressive. Another thing you'll notice immediately is that we're stuck with the flashlight instead of the building lights. And let me tell you, as I'm sure you can already see, it is dark as fucking shit in this goddamn building with no lights. Of course, your flashlight has power, so you'll have to use it sparingly. You'll need to use it to check the hallways and to even be able to see Peggy in front of you. This honestly adds a whole new level of fear to this game, mainly with Peggy. I never got very good at telling when she switched positions, and to now have it where I can't even naturally see her just added a whole new fear factor, and I love it. The other 2 threats are the animatronic we saw in the post-night 2 cutscene, dubbed the Figure, and Mark himself, which is honestly one of the coolest twists I've ever seen. Having the character you've been playing as the whole time flip like this, it's insane. It's honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen come out of a FNAF game. Let's start with Mark. Mark works the same as Harry and Johnny, except I feel like he's even easier. He can attack from either of the 2 halls, and unlike Johnny and Harry, you cannot see his eyes. He's also much, much quieter. The reason I think he's easier? Well, you don't have to do any mental counting to tell when he's going to attack, as he has a totally unique sound cue for when he enters your office. So as long as you've got fast reflexes, it's really just a game of waiting to hear the sound cue and putting on the mask. The final new threat on this night is, of course, the Figure. He takes the place of Tony and Showman attacking your vents. He can attack any of the 3 you have, since there won't be 2 characters going for the vents at the same time. Again, I honestly feel like this is easier than Tony and Showman. Of course, the Figure is fucking light speed fast when choosing and climbing through vents, so as long as you've got fast reflexes, it really shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Ironically enough, the main challenge I had with this night was not the 2 new threats, but the 2 returning threats, Peggy and Cap and Cackle. Again, these 2 have the best synergy out of any of the characters in this game, so bringing them back for night 6 was a no-brainer. Really, the actual problem for me was Peggy. The sheer speed at which she moves is enough to make you shit in your britches, and nearing the end of the night, she will be moving at a speed Usain Bolt would be creaming his pants over. But if you can control your nerves for long enough, you'll complete night 6 and move on to the post-night cutscene. Matthew runs as fast as he can to the exit, only to find it locked. Turning around, we see Mark slowly creeping up on us like the booty cheek creep freak. The screen cuts to black, and we're left with only the screams of Matthew echoing throughout the pizzeria, and Showman's The Awakening comes to a close. Kind of. We're not exactly done just yet. There's actually 6 other secrets this game has to offer, that being the secret tapes. On each night, you will be able to find one of these tapes and play them later. On night 1, if you check camera 9, you'll be able to see a tape on the shelf in the top left corner. Night 2's tape is located in one of the drawers in your office. Night 3's tape is located on camera 3 on a shelf in the bottom left corner. Night 4's tape is located on camera 2 at the top of the screen. Night 5's tape is located on camera 5 on a high shelf in the middle of the camera. And Night 6 tape is conveniently located directly in front of you on the desk. Hey there, post-scripting Deku here. Turns out I'm fucking wrong. These are not the locations of the tapes on every night. Turns out every single night, besides the 6th one, has a random location for each tape, each being on a different camera. This was just the order that I had. So, yeah. Sorry about that. These tapes, as I'm sure you could have guessed, go over some extra bits of lore to help us piece together the story. And this is the part of the video where I say, I'm very sorry, guys. I'm terrible at talking about story, but I'm going to try my best here. Tape 1 shows all of the characters on stage singing the happy birthday song to a kid whose name isn't explicitly said. We can see by the date of the tape that this takes place in 1995. Tape 2 seems to be a sort of log from Jason, explaining his reasoning for why he believes the characters are acting so hostile. Originally, when they were first being built, they attempted to add an advanced facial recognition system that would allow the characters to actually see and think for themselves. Although the system never ended up working as intended, they wiped the idea from their systems. Well, guess what, fucker? Turns out they really didn't, and Jason seems to think that this is the reason the characters are acting the way they are. Jason makes a brief mention of an unnamed him and questions if one of his employees are potentially tampering with the characters. I'm guessing that him is referring to either Mark or the figure. Tape 3 shows 2 guys working on Tony. They're talking about how these robots should be scrapped because of how old they are, and then the guy in the back says a sentence that I literally cannot for the fucking life of me decipher. Like many other things in this game, the static that plays during these cutscenes is so fucking loud I can't hear anything except it. I'll play what he says here, and if any of you guys can decipher it, please let me know in the comments.
That company's been up in deals with recently. Well, why?
Tape 4 is one of my favorites. It really gives off the FNAF VHS style that I really like. A maintenance worker is running a test on Cap'n Cackle. It doesn't quite go as planned as he bugs out, so they restart him and then get attacked. Afterwards, showing the lifeless corpse of the employee laying on the floor in front of Cap'n Cackle. It's just such an unnerving moment to see this in person. Usually when it comes to FNAF games and death, you don't see it. So seeing it in a game like this is really unnerving, and it adds a sort of realism to the actual events that are taking place. Tape 5 is probably my favorite of all the tapes, being the most terrifying in my opinion. In it, we're in the perspective of what sounds like a young girl. Hiding under a table, we hear a scream from another room. Shortly after, Johnny walks into the room and starts to look around. The girl accidentally makes a noise, and when she looks back up, Johnny is staring at her. And he quickly goes for the kill. This is such a fucking horrific and terrifying situation to think about being in. And I think that's why I like it so much. Just imagining being in the same situation makes my hair stand. Tape number 6 is an odd one. We appear to be being spoken to by the figure. He tells us that the birthday we saw earlier was Timmy's 12th birthday. He had 2 of his friends with him that day, and it was a party made specifically for him. Then we see 3 drawings of his friends, all of them sad. The figure appears in front of us and slowly glances up before the tape ends. Again, as I've previously stated, lore analysis is not my strong suit at all, so I really can't even begin to imagine what anything here means. I know robots mad and robots kill, and I think that is neat enough. Overall, Showman's The Awakening is such a big step up from Phobia, And while I still do love that game, I think I love Showman's even more. Amazing graphical upgrades, fantastic cutscenes, and a gameplay loop that's so fun, difficult, yet still not frustrating. This game really has it all, and I truly think it's a fantastic game to play if you're at all interested in horror games. Even if you're not a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I still think you should give it a try. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think that reimagining this game from Phobia wasn't really worth it? Let me know in the comments below. In my Five Nights at Candy's video, I asked you guys if you thought Five Nights at Candy still holds up today. My favorite comment is this one by the Phantom Split. It's too long for me to get into right here, but I think you should pause to read it. The question of this video is, what is your favorite gameplay mechanic from any FNAF game, official or fan-made, and why? With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dxtr, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!